back when you were doing cold email, what was your strategy where you were spending 10 minutes trying to research that person? And like, if that's what you did, what was your thought process? And like, how did you kind of systematize that so it's not just like writing something new every time?
First of all, yeah, I mean, everything is mine. So here as well. So I'm happy to speak to any topics. We're actually doing a significant investment in energy and resources into cold outreach right now at our agency. I actually have hired Anne to oversee it. So for context, we'll be talking about it more and more because we've refined it a little bit, but what we're finding is working well right now. I mean, first of all, keep in mind the time, right? From November until second week of January, maybe even the end of January, just because people are so busy coming back from the holidays. It's a really difficult time to get in touch with people, right? So I would say if you're doing it right now and not getting the results you're expecting, that could be a good reason for it. Nobody's looking to add more stuff onto their plate right now, especially as we get closer and closer to the holiday. For us, I mean, we're pretty much shutting down tomorrow until after January 1st. I mean, we'll still be online and whatnot, but I won't be really taking any meetings, and this goes for everyone, right? So that's number one. But now let's just talk about kind of general approaches. So what's working really well for us right now, one is, again, as we know, having your specific avatar, your ICP clearly defined and dialed in. What's working very well for us is really twofold. So we're basically building a team around it because it takes so much time and energy to do it, right? To ask one person to do it, especially if it's going to be you, it's a significant investment of your time and mental energy. So we pay him about $800 a month. He's in the Philippines. Hired him off Upwork. We're hiring him to essentially be like our prospector, right? Where his job is to continuously find contacts and record them. So we use a platform called Apollo.io. It's basically like a pretty good prospecting tool. I haven't used it personally too. I'm just speaking based off what my team is telling me. I personally also think LinkedIn Sales Navigator is great. And the reason why I'll get to it in a second. But so prospecting, right? Finding all the contact info, etc. The email that you had wrote, I thought was pretty good in terms of like the personalization level. I actually got a really good email today, but like this guy, he was on my YouTube channel and he took a screenshot of my YouTube and like put a little cartoon in the back and was like, hey, there's something in your video. Stupid, but like it got my attention, right? The thing with that type of outreach is that only works if you're only finding people who are very active on YouTube, right? Just contextualize as that makes sense. When it comes to personalization, basically, if you have to break your process every time you're doing personalization, like AKA spending an extra hour, it's probably not going to be worth it because it just won't scale, right? So that personalization has to be built into your prospecting mechanism, right? So for us, kind of like you did, we usually go after deficiencies, right? Like, hey, your website's losing traffic. Hey, your content is underperforming. Hey, you have toxic links, anything that might kind of like raise a red flag or get their attention, right? So that's like what I call prospecting, right? Personalization. You can go down a wormhole with personalization being like, hey, I saw you on a podcast. It's not, that stuff all works, right? It helps to get their attention, but ultimately what's going to drive action is the offer. And I think reading your email, you have a pretty good offer. So anyways, back to our process. So we have Joe, he's doing the prospecting. He records in a spreadsheet. He's constantly finding new opportunities. And then we have Caleb, who was our sales rep, but we basically converted him to like a BDR, SDR role where, and basically what we're going to look into doing in the off year too is combining those two roles into one to basically just being like a hunter role where their job is just set appointments on me or Caesar's calendar with, high impact attorneys. So what we're doing is we're starting with emails and then we're doing a lot of follow-ups on LinkedIn. And the thing that's really working well is actually voice drops and voice notes on LinkedIn. So going back to the prospecting process, right? We had to iterate on it because originally our BDR sales rep was like, I'm not the contacts that we're finding because we're using Apollo and we're starting with website and email. He's like, they're not even on LinkedIn or they're not active on LinkedIn. So that's why I actually like LinkedIn Sales Navigator because that the person is on LinkedIn and active on LinkedIn. And I think having two connection points with them, email and LinkedIn is very powerful, right? So what we're doing on LinkedIn though is the opposite of, or not the opposite, I should say, but like, I'm very much so not a fan of people who just bombard you nonstop with like connections there or messages there. So I like to follow up or reference the email that we had sent. And again, also just like voice notes or even like a quick loom. It's just like the easiest way to break through all the bullshit on there. So that would be my advice. Make sure that the personalization mechanism is built into your prospecting systems. So you're not breaking your processes to find a bunch of random information, and then use LinkedIn and use like a human, not like, like an automation bot.
So advice that I got that sounded good, but I found to be really hard to put into practice is they suggested, hey, make this email sound like least that first line, make it sound like if we were talking at a coffee shop for our first meeting, like how you would talk then. But I found that really challenging because like an email is so different than you would, the way you talk in email is so different than you would talk at a coffee shop in general, or just talk. If we were to grab a drink, like we would talk differently than we would talk if I sent you a cold email.
I don't know if that's the most useful advice because I think it's basically just to keep it light and conversational, right? Yeah. It also depends on who you're talking to, right?